The suffering of a man and his struggle with being separated, not only from the spirit he once had, but from the home he is apart from. And this long suffering is of a man that creates a void in that man if he is devoid of God, and out of that void creates desire out of feeling incomplete. And out of feeling incomplete, he is motivated and determined to chase after treasures of which he desires from his heart, but not knowing God, and therefore not knowing himself, between the nature of his spirit in which God gave him and the spirit of his flesh. The considerations of life being flesh rather than being of the spirit is to be carnally minded, and to be separated or have distance between you and heaven also creates such a void or a black hole. And this black hole, as the fruit in the garden, looked good to eat, and the sight of the eyes, out of which the pupil or student is as a bottomless pit, not knowing themselves, nor the extent of the desires of the element of carbonite or soil. The entire history or library of prior lives of men, and their knowledge and their tradition. As God heard Abel's blood cry up from the ground, so can the spiritual man who has the Spirit of God hear these lowercase gods, the traditions of men, and therefore considering the aptitude of his horizon, of which upon it sits a spot from which his perceptions and moral leanings in all things of this nature creates light and darkness in considerations of his attitudes and leanings. So therefore, it's a subtle thing that in knowledge you can know light and you can know darkness. But in knowing darkness, if darkness is ignorance, then a man can know not. And if a man knows not, then he is in a state of ignorance without understanding of oneself. Out of that lack and void of not knowing life or knowing the Most High God. These things come by relationships and not by knowledge. Even knowing and understanding the entire Bible, one can be devoid of having the proper spirit. And we learn things by associations and categories, and how we feel about things, and how we feel about things in such matters is a polarity or a separation in such is accordance only according to perception of the individual, as the flesh knows the desires of a man by its impulses, but knows not of itself. And the spiritual man, altruistically and learning things according to commonality rather than their differences, sees things in a different light. And this light is not according to knowledge, while knowledge separates the understanding of light and dark, and consciousness, light and dark, can exist in the same place. And we call that consciousness because when you illuminate something in your consciousness, you don't need a light source to see all sides. And that's a circumference of understanding rather than the linear associations that go according to knowledge as astrology upon its belly before heaven. Peace and blessings be with you all.